This episode of the SketchUp Show is an excerpt from a live Q&A webinar that took place in March 2012. In this clip, I work through a question about modeling a tufted cushion. Diane sent a question that asked about modeling kind of the form of this piece, but then also more specifically, there was that photograph that you forwarded and this photograph here with this tufted fabric back panel on the back wall. So that kind of opens the door to talk about another option. And in this case, what I did is I kind of tried to deconstruct the tufted fabric and look more precisely at the geometry. And where I ultimately landed was going in and drawing a square. Just draw 4 circles to make them all the same size. 4 inches there, 4 inches there, 4 inches there, 4 inches there. And then get rid of the buttons. Then I came back and I got rid of this part too. And took the arc tool, 6-sided arc, and drew these little bulges that were about, let's say maybe 6 inches tall. And again, we're working pretty wildly out of scale here, but bear with me. This framework is something that now I can use and come back and fill in using something like the soapskin bubble, which lets me go in and set division for that framework. How many times is that framework going to be broken up lengthwise and heighthwise? So you can see here, this is basically a grid of a 10 by 10 grid. So if I'm cool with that, press enter, and the soapskin bubble does its thing, gets that all to fill in. And then once it's filled in, I can pick that surface and inflate it with a pressure of around -40 or -60. And that's what kind of gives us that little bit of a billow in addition to the seams that we have drawn there. So then we can go with the select tool, triple click that, soften smooth, reverse faces. One thing about the soapskin bubble, it makes a surface, but it keeps the lines in case you want to go back and give it another shot with a different pressure or a different kind of inflation. So if I go back and delete the lines, it also just makes it a group. So if I upgrade that group to a component before then making the copies, 4x this time, then we can go through, copy this one over. And now if you decided you wanted to come back and make a change to one of those pieces, to do something to it, I'm not sure exactly what you would do to it, but if you wanted to make a change to it, you could. And then we can come back with the circle tool and find the points where we would want to go in and draw our little buttons. Same thing here, we could do a little offset, do a little auto fold, soften smooth the edges, and then make that into a component too. And then same thing, take the move tool, copy the button over, and then copy both buttons over this way. What are we looking at, 3x for that. And so now too, if you wanted to go in and make a change to the button, if it was too tall, you could take the scale tool, scale it down, make it a little shorter, and that way all the buttons end up getting a little bit shorter. The trick here was then to figure out a way to resolve the outer edge of the cushion. And that's where things started to get a bit trickier. And so here, the fact that these are all components, I could maybe go and pick the 4 corners and make those unique, then go in and start filling in the corners and smoothing out those corners. If the corner gets smoothed in a certain way for one of these corners, then it's going to need to be thought about a little bit differently for the others. So this is where we can either come in and we can start to rotate these around 90 degrees if they're perfectly square, or if they're not perfectly square, if they're rectangular in some way, then that's when we need to start getting jiggy with the flip along tool again. And so probably better to just do that here anyway. So right click, flip along, components red. Looks like we got that one. And then these two would probably need to be flipped along the green direction. And so this one would then need to get flipped along the red direction also. So we've got the 4 corners worked out, and now it's just the other pieces. So this one, 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 and this one would all need to be unique. Because these are going to be the ones that kind of live in the middle, where it's just going to be 2 corners that get filled in. And then again, this one, what are we looking at here? I think these we could probably just rotate around for now. Not think too hard about it. That gets us most of the way there. Now, the only other thing we might want to do is go back to hidden geometry and start to flatten out the edges. And so for stuff like that, I think our best bet is going to be something along the lines of using the scale tool to just kind of try to smush it down. Same thing here. If we just select these pieces and then take the scale tool, we can start to smush it down. And that's again where it's nice that we've got this all set up as a bunch of components. And then all I did back over here was use the follow me tool. I drew a little profile that had that kind of beaded edge and a little bit of a billow for the side profile. So just drew this all as a little follow me tool extrusion and drew myself a rounded rectangle as a base to start with. So you can kind of see that the starting base had a little bit of an arc to it. So a little rounded rectangle starting base, and then sent this profile around that rounded rectangle to get the base for that thing. So I'll just make a copy of this and move it over, kind of a little cheat. I'll fast forward here. And with that in place too, it's another opportunity to come back and try tweaking those little cushions again to get them full on smushed down far enough to get tucked all the way down. Cool. Back a little too far. But it's nice. I like working with components in that way, when you go and you make one little change in one place and then you zoom out and you can see that it works pretty much all the way around the rest of it. That's kind of what components are there for, so it's nice when things kind of work out that way sometimes. So scale that all the way down. And if it's too harsh, you come back and you grab the next line a little bit. Scale that down. That just kind of softens that whole thing out. You can check out the other questions covered in this webinar, as well as over 30 hours of additional webinar recordings on our website, go-2-school.com, where memberships start at just $29 a month.